I have a question for you all. Have you ever played the game Wordle? If you have, well, let me know what your longest winning streak is down below in the comments. If you haven't, though, let's just say I hope your vocabulary is broad enough. You know, it might be time for you to pull out the old crossword puzzles again. That, or, you could just simply stick around and learn what you need to know to beat R6CX right here and now. For this level, I recommend you bring with you a bio tracker, a mine deployer, a seafoam launcher, and a burst sentry. I recommend the bio tracker because in this level you will be dealing with a fair amount of shadows, especially if you go for the optional objective, and in any level where you'll be facing off against a lot of shadows, you are going to want the bio tracker. Very, very little exception to this general rule of GTFO. As for the mine deployer and the seafoam launcher, these are going to be the general things we're going to be using for a lot of the alarm doors in this level. Shut a door or two, mine them, seafoam them, maybe even re-seafoam them a bit, and you'll make the alarm doors quite a bit easier for you and your team. There will also be some blood doors, so the mine deployer will help out there, and if you are going for the optional objective, there are going to be some moments where shutting doors behind you, mining and seafoaming them, and then just keep on running ahead, could potentially save you and your team a whole lot of resources, so these two tools are incredibly important for this level. And then finally, when it comes to the burst sentry, this map consists mostly of the floodways tile set, and a lot of floodway tiles are big, wide open rooms, so long-range sentries do pretty good in this environment. But the thing is, we're facing off against a lot of shadows in this level, especially in the second half of it, and sentries with longer rates of fire, or I guess slower rates of fire, don't really do that well against shadows because the tag on them doesn't last for nearly as long, and once that ping goes away, your sentry is going to go back into standby mode and not shoot at them even if they're right there in front of their face. So because we're dealing with shadows, we want a sentry with long range capabilities that has a pretty decent rate of fire. And the only sentry like that currently in this rundown that we have would be the burst sentry, which is why I recommend it more than I recommend the auto sentry or the sniper sentry. Other than that, there's not really anything else you need to know about this loadout, so let's get into the level itself. Dropping down to the level, you'll see that your main objective is to restart the power supply by using the terminals located inside of Zone 183, and you'll be starting off inside of Zone 180. Now, Zone 180 itself doesn't really have anything I need to take note of, so let's move to the far back end of it where we'll find the security door to Zone 181, this being a Class 5 cluster alarm. As you can see with the map overlay, there's only one room that enemies can spawn in, and only one door that they have to go through to get into your room. So make sure that door is closed, mined, and seafoamed, and then you and your team, when ready, can get to work on the scans. The first full team scan is usually down below in the room and it takes a little while for it to appear, so it might be difficult to keep re-seafoaming the door, but I do urge you to do your best to keep that door shut for as long as you possibly can, even if it does mean using up pretty much all of your seafoam. A lot of the scans are going to be going up above and down below in the room, so I recommend after the full team scan, 2 people go up above and 2 people stay down below. That way you're not constantly climbing up and down a ladder going after these scans. Once you finish all the scans and all the enemies are dead, you can head into Zone 181 itself. Just like Zone 180, there's not really anything too unique inside Zone 181. Towards the back end of it, you will be able to find a security door to Zone 182, but this security door is just going to be a full team scan. However, before you open up this door, you're going to want to go to all the entrances into your room, there should be 3 of them, and make sure all 3 of those doors are shut and you place 1 mine on each. Just the mine, no seafoam though. The reason for this is, even though this is just a full team scan, once you open up the security door to 182, a blackout is going to occur. And while this blackout is only temporary, it will spawn in a wave of shadow strikers from behind you. And this isn't too terribly difficult to deal with in normal situations, but sometimes you can get unlucky and there's a lot of enemies in the first room of 182, and if you end up waking all of them up and then you have the shadow wave from behind, you can find yourself in a pretty nasty pensive situation. So I like to shut the doors behind me and mine every single one of them, that way I can more easily just deal with all the enemies in 182 stealthily, and then once the lights do come back on, I could just go back, kill any of the shadows that might have survived, and then pick up any mines that are still left over, and then just keep moving on in 182. The rest of 182 is pretty simple. There'll be some enemies, there will be some resources, but again, nothing too terribly special in here. Towards the end of it though, you will be able to find the security door to Zone 183, and this is once again just going to be a full team scan. Inside of Zone 183, you'll be able to find the 2 terminals that you need for the main objective. The first one being in the middle of the room, very obvious, hard to miss this one. But the second one being hidden up above to the southeastern corner of the room in a secret little compartment also known as Schaefer's Hideout. This one can actually be pretty easy to miss if you don't really look around too much. However, both of these terminals are currently password locked and require you to gain passwords in order to unlock them. The passwords being located in different locations though. The one for the middle of the room is located on the terminals inside Zone 185. However, the one in Schaefer's Hideout is hidden on the terminals located throughout Zone 186, 187, 188, and 189, which is a fair amount of stuff to remember, but don't worry too much about that, as the only place we actually have access to right now is the security door to Zone 184, which is found on the western side of this room. So grab your resources from in here, anything that you can grab, and then head over there and get ready because this is going to be a Class 4 cluster alarm. As you can see with the map overlay, once again there's only one location that enemies can spawn at, and there's only one door that they have to go through to get to you. So make sure that door is shut, mined, and seafoamed, and then I recommend you place your burst sentry right around here in the room, facing directly south towards that door. That way, once the door breaks open and the enemies blow up to the mines, any future wave that spawns in is going to have to go through the line of fire of that burst sentry before they get to you. So burst sentry will kill off a few enemies and weaken some of the other ones, making it a bit easier for you to deal with them while you're focusing on the scans in your room. Once your preparations are good and you're ready to go, activate the alarm door, focus on the scans, kill any enemies that get in, and once you finish it, you can go out there, pick up your burst sentry, and then head into Zone 184. When heading into Zone 184, be a little bit careful as this zone is all just one big room, and in here there will always be 2 scouts as well as a few other enemies, so the last thing you want to do is actually wake up both of those scouts. But once you dealt with all the enemies and you've collected any resources you can find in here, you can head to the security door to 185, which will let you know that the door is unpowered and requires you to use the terminal in 184 with you to reroute the power to it. Be careful though, because once you put that command to the terminal and reroute the power, the game will give you a message letting you know that a blackout will occur in 80 seconds. And once this blackout occurs, an error alarm is going to initiate. This error alarm will spawn in 2 shadow giants roughly every 60 seconds. And the only way to restore power and get rid of this error alarm is by using the terminal inside Zone 183 to turn the emergency power back on. However, this terminal is password locked as we said earlier, so you're going to need to head into Zone 185 and look for the 4 terminals because all 4 of them will have 1 letter each to the password that you need to unlock it. So once your team is ready to go, use the terminal 184, put the command in, and rush over to the security door to Zone 185. This security door is just going to have a full team scan tied to it. You're going to want to be quick and gain as much ground as you can before the lights go out, but be careful because the only enemies inside Zone 185 are going to be sleeping shadow strikers. So don't just run headfirst into a room because you think it's empty, because there's a pretty good chance that it is not. Work around the bio tracker as they'll be able to know where the shadows are located and if things do end up waking up. Inside Zone 185, like I said, there are 4 terminals, and here's a map to show you where every single one of them are. The first terminal is in the first room right in front of the door, so you literally cannot miss this one. The second terminal is in the second room, also in a pretty obvious spot, hard to miss this one. But the third and fourth terminal are located in the third room. So I would recommend take things one room at a time. If need be, pull the enemies and deal with them. There are 2 doors in the zone that you can use to mine and seafoam. Keep an eye out from behind you, that way the shadow giants don't sneak up on you. And when you get to that third room, I recommend you just have 1 person go in while 3 people defend outside, shut the door behind you so the shooting doesn't wake up the room you're in. Go for the third terminal, get the letter from it, and then if you can make out what the word is with just those 3 letters, head out of the room and make your way back to Zone 183, put the password into the terminal to unlock it, put the emergency power supply command into it, and once you do that, the lights will come back on, the error alarm will turn off, and the only enemies you might still have to worry about is anything that is still alive. If the music goes away, then you know everything is dead and you are in the clear. Upon putting that command to the terminal 2, the security door to the east, specifically to Zone 186, is going to unlock. But before you go there, I recommend you go back to 184 and 185 to just make sure you collected all the resources that you can. Just make sure that if you do go back to look for resources, you're careful of any shadows that might still be alive. Once you have all the resources you need though, you can head to the security door to 186 and do the full team scan that is tied to it. Once you open up the security door to Zone 186, a blackout is going to occur, and with this blackout, we are going to have yet another error alarm, this one spawning in 3 small shadow strikers roughly every 30 seconds. What you're about to do is basically the same thing you just had to do in 185. You're going to have to look for terminals to find out what the password is. That way you can go back to 183, go to the terminal in Schaefer's room, unlock it, and use it to restore power to the level to shut off the error alarm. Although things are going to be a little bit different. Instead of having just all 4 terminals be in one big zone, all 4 of these terminals are going to be in 4 different zones. One of them being in 186, the other one being in 187, then 188, and 189, all of which are connected to zone 186. So what you're going to want to do is head into 186. There will never be any enemies sleeping in here whatsoever, just some resources, a lot of explosive mines, and 3 blood doors. Go to the northeastern corner of it where you'll find the first terminal, that way you can get one of the letters, and then go to the northern end of it where you'll find the security door to zone 187. All 3 of the blood doors in this zone will spawn in a ton of Shadow Strikers. So many to the point where most of them will not actually get to the door before the door opens up and will not be blown up by the mine. Usually I find about 50% of the enemies that spawn in do get blown up, and the other 50% you have to deal with by shooting. So what I recommend you do is before you open up the first blood door, wait for one of the waves from the error alarm to reach you, deal with them, and that way you have about 30 seconds before you have to worry about the next wave hitting you from behind. Then just open it up, and then let most of the shadows come out, blow up to the mine, and then once the mine blows up, tag the remainder shadows with a biotracker. That way your team has the most amount of time to shoot at them before the ping disappears. Once you've dealt with every single one of the shadows, head into zone 187. The terminal will be immediately to the right of you. Get the letter from it, and then run back out to 186, go to the eastern end of it, and go to 188. At this point, you just rinse and repeat the process, putting a mine on it, wait for a wave to catch up to you, deal with it from behind, open the blood door, yada yada, you get the point. The terminal inside zone 188 will be located directly to the eastern side of the room, up above at the top of the ramp, and by this point, with 3 of the 4 letters, you should be able to guess what the password is. If this isn't the case, you can head to the southern blood door to zone 189 and head in there. The terminal is located directly to the south, it's out in the open, it's pretty easy to see this one. Once you have all the letters that you need, whether it be 2, 3, or 4, you can head back to zone 183, go into Schaefer's hideout, put the password into the terminal, unlock it, and then put the same command as you did earlier into it to restore the power and shut off the error alarm. Then you just simply have to deal with any of the enemies that are still left alive. Once you've done all of this, the security door to the north to zone 190 will unlock, but before we go up there, we're going to want to head back into zone 186, 187, 188, and 189 and grab any resources that we might have left behind in our hurry. Then once we've looted up all the way and we're ready to go, we can head to the northern end and get ready to deal with the security door to zone 190. The security door to zone 190 is going to have a class 1 sustain alarm tied to it. And normally I would show you a map overlay for this, but there's actually not really a point for this one. Because no matter what direction they spawn from, the west, the east, or the south, there's nothing you can really do to buy yourself time. There are no doors you can close by seafoam because they've either already been broken open due to previous alarms, or it's just an open security door. Which initially makes it sound like this might actually be pretty difficult, but thankfully, it's not too bad. The sustain scan will always go into the middle of the room near where the first terminal was, and because of this, enemies can only come at us from either the western side or from the eastern side. They can't physically surround us in a 360 donut. So all you need to do is just pay attention to what direction they're actively coming from, as they typically don't come from both directions at the same time, and just focus your fire in that direction and rotate your sentry so it's facing that way. If they come from the west, make sure your sentry is facing towards the west. If they come from the east, position that sentry to the east, and you shouldn't have too much of a difficult time. Just make sure that you're shooting at the enemies from afar before they get close to you, and you deal with the shooters, because if you let the shooters pile up a little bit too much, then you basically have a makeshift hybrid or two coming after you, which is never a good thing. So make sure if you have something like the Hell Revolver, DMR, or Hellgun, you deal with them from afar before they pile up too much. But once you finish the scan and every single enemy is dead, you can head to the security door to 190, do the checkpoint scan that's tied to it, and then head into zone 190 itself. At this point, you're basically done with the level if you're just going for the main objective, because inside zone 190 there will never be any enemies. There are just going to be some resources, your very first bulkhead key, as well as the bulkhead door control to the high and extreme objectives. And if you're going for just the main objective, you just have to plug the bulkhead key in, do the main team scan, and then go to the security door 191, do the full team scan tied to it, and walk right on in. There are no enemies left whatsoever in the level. There's nothing in 191 you need to be afraid of. There aren't even going to be any enemies that come after you while you're on extraction, because this is a silent extraction scan. So at this point, yeah, if you're just going for the main objective, you're done. But if you're going for the extreme objective, that is not quite the case, because of course you still need to take care of that. So what I would recommend for you people is to make sure you grab everything inside zone 190, collect all the resources, and then go over to the door control, plug your bulkhead key in, and then preload the main scan. Because once you finish the extreme objective, you're gonna have a lot of enemies chasing you, so every little second will matter. So hop on the main scan, get it to about 90%, then hop off, do the extreme scan, that way it unlocks the bulkhead door to zone 249, and then head over there. Okay, so we're going for the extreme objective. We have quite a bit of stuff to do and not a whole lot of time to do it. As you can see, when you enter into zone 249, you'll see a timer appear at the top of your screen, and this is to indicate that you are about to do a Warden Survival Protocol. So if you're somebody who did R6C3, you already know the general gist of what you're about to do. However, instead of having to survive for 30 minutes, you only need to survive for about 10 minutes. Don't let that fool you though, because this doesn't mean it's going to be any easier. So what can you expect throughout these 10 minutes? Well, to start off with, the only type of enemies that'll be spawning in and coming after you are going to be regular strikers and shooters. Then after a few minutes, you will get a wave of a few giant strikers. I believe it's usually 2 or 3 of them. And then shortly after you get that wave, around the 7-minute mark, I believe, a blackout is going to occur and the lights are never going to be coming back on again. And from this point on, the only type of enemies that are going to be spawning in are going to be shadow strikers and every once in a while a few shadow giants. So you're going to want to be very careful once the blackout occurs. And even after that timer hits 0, waves of shadow strikers are still going to keep spawning in. There'll be a little bit of breathing room after the timer hits 0, but once you hear the music start up again, you're going to have waves spawning in, and these waves are going to have a lot of shadows in them. So ideally, you want to finish everything you can, that way once that timer hits 0, you can get out of this level and make your way back to the extraction. So starting off inside zone 249, there will be some enemies in the first room, and there will be 3 rooms connected to the first room. You're going to want to go to all 3 of those rooms, make sure all the doors are open, as all these doors could potentially be quite valuable. You're going to want to clear out every single enemy in 249, as well as collect any resources you can get. And then once you've done that, you're going to want to go to the western room, because you'll be able to find the security door to zone 250 inside of there. This security door is going to be a class 3 cluster alarm, so let's take a look at the map overlay. As you can see, there are 3 different locations enemies can spawn from. But we are going to be leaving these 2 doors open because even though they can help out during this alarm, they could potentially help us out even more later on, so we want to preserve them for now. So the only thing we want to really do is make sure that the door that leads into our room is shut, mined, and seafoamed, and then while you work out the scans, reapply some seafoam to it. That way the enemies don't break in until you completely finish the scans. Once the scans are all finished, you kind of just wait for the door to break open and kill off the remainder enemies, or you could just immediately book into zone 250 itself. Inside of zone 250, you're going to be looking for a power cell that you need to continue further on into the expedition. But this power cell could be located in a number of different rooms, and inside zone 250, there are a total of 12 rooms, going all the way from the letter A down to the letter L. So what you're going to want to do is you make your way in and look for one of the 3 terminals that you can find pretty early on in the zone. Use the terminal, ping the location of the power cell, and see exactly which room it's in, and then make your way to it. Be careful as you're making your way through the zone though, because not only do you have to worry about the waves of enemies coming from behind you, you also need to worry about the regular strikers and shooters that you can find sleeping inside the zone. Don't forget that there are many doors you can use back here, so mines and seafoam are going to help out quite a bit, and if you have no door nearby and you have a huge wave about to hit you, you could always plop down your sentry, that way you have a little bit of extra firepower. But make your way through the zone, look for the power cell, and then once you find it, you're going to want to make your way back. By this time, the blackout has most likely occurred, so really the only type of enemies you have to worry about now are going to be shadow type enemies, so make sure whoever has a biotracker is keeping a close eye on it, and that way you don't get swarmed by a huge wave of shadows. If you see only 1 or 2 shadows approaching you, then that usually means it's either going to be some shadow giants, or it's just the front end of the wave and there's about 10 or 15 more that are shortly behind them. Once you make your way out of the zone though with the power cell, you're going to want to go to the northern end of zone 249 where you'll be able to find the generator, plug the power cell in, and then go to the security door that's in the same room that leads you to zone 251. This is just going to be a full team scan. Inside of zone 251, you'll be able to find some more enemies, some more resources, as well as the security door to zone 252. But this security door will be under lockdown until the timer at the top of your screen hits 0. So if you make it here before the timer hits 0, you're going to have to hold out for a bit. If you make it here afterwards though, the door will be unlocked and you'll be able to do the full team scan that's tied to it. When you go into zone 252 though, I recommend that not everybody rush headfirst in, because while there are never going to be any enemies in 252, this zone consists of 2 small rooms, and the bulkhead key you need is usually in the second one. And if all 4 of you rush into that second room and a new wave spawns in, they are going to be very, very close to you. So I recommend only 1 or 2 people go in while the other people stay outside. Then when you have the bulkhead key, you're going to want to slowly push your way back to zone 190. The reason why I recommend you preserve those doors, by the way, is for this reason. Because after that timer hits 0, you do have a little breathing room before the next wave spawns in, but once the wave starts spawning in again, they will spawn in about, I think, 15 or maybe even 20 Shadow Strikers at a time. So it's very easy to just go back, shut a door in front of you, mine it, C-foam it, let the mine blow up most of the shadows, and then quickly book your way through them, get back into zone 190, and then when you're in there, you don't have to worry nearly as much because if a new wave spawns in, they're going to be spawning very, very far away from you, giving you plenty of time to make it to extraction. Sometimes pushing your way out of the extreme bulkhead zone is the hardest part to do, since if you don't have any of these doors preserved, you need to fight these waves of shadows without any mines or C-foam, and you sort of just keep falling back more and more, and you find yourself in a standstill where you can never push up enough to get out of here, because you just have to keep falling back, that way you don't die to the shadows. So take advantage of the 2 small rooms that are connected to the first room of zone 249, that way you can just kill them all off immediately, and then book it out. But once you make it to zone 190, just go to the bulkhead door control, put the bulkhead key in, finish the remainder of the high scan that you already preloaded, and then make your way to the northern end, go to the security door to zone 191, do the full team scan, then rush right in and get on the extraction scan. You just have to defend for a little bit while the scan quickly gains progress, and once that scan hits 100%, you are done and you have beaten R6CX. And that's all there really is to it. Just like always, if you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you want to say, feel free to leave it down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, then consider hitting that like button and sharing it with your friends. It helps out the channel and it helps these videos get noticed by people who really need them. And while you're down there, you might as well hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. I do make other content besides level guides, you know? I also have my own Discord server, so if you want to go the extra mile and become part of the community I'm building, hop right on in. The link is down in the description. Also in the description, you can find a link that will take you to the official GTFO merch store. So if you love this game and you want to pick up some sweet looking merch, go take a look and see what they've got for you. Until next time, don't forget to expand your vocabulary a little bit. You never know when it might come in handy again after all. And I'll see you all in the next video.